In his first 100 days as mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani filled over 100,000 potholes. He secured $1.2 billion to launch universal childcare for 2-year-olds, which saved working parents, by the way, $20,000 per child. He showed up to shovel snow with residents during back-to-back winter storms, and on his 100th day in office, he held a bracket-style competition where New Yorkers voted on the neighborhood problem they most wanted fixed, and then went and fixed it himself with the sanitation crew. In just 100 days, he was able to accomplish all of this. And people could not believe this. His campaign itself reached way beyond New York even. I mean, if you go into one of his Instagram posts and look at the comments, you'll see people from London, from Lagos, from Brazil, from Morocco, places across the world where people will never ride a New York City subway in their lives, calling this man their mayor. And if you've seen it, you've probably asked the same question I've been asking, which is, if he can do all of this, then what the hell is everyone else doing? Why does one mayor filling potholes and fighting for childcare feel like democracy is finally working for us? And why is this exceptional and not just the bar we should expect when it comes to our government? And I want to tell you why Mamdani was positioned to do what he did. And I want to tell you why almost no other mayor is actually doing what he does. And I want to tell you what any of us can actually do to change that and actually start making a difference in our city. And all of this starts, of course, with simply even knowing who your mayor is. To understand why Mamdani feels like the exception though, you have to understand what the mayor's office actually is and how it works. So here's the simplest way I can put it. When something goes wrong at the federal level, there's always someone else to blame. The president points at Congress, the Congress points at the other party, your senator points at the other house. There's always a wall between the politician and the thing that inevitably didn't happen. For a mayor though, there is no wall. If your street has a pothole that's been there for 6 months, that's your mayor's pothole. If your kid's school is failing, that is your mayor's school where they send their kids. And the biggest city in the country, with all the people sitting in front of him, Mamdani actually used that power. But here's what I think people underestimate about why he moved so fast. His campaign itself wasn't just a campaign, it was thousands of canvassers, real grassroots organizing, and a genuine movement of people who were hungry, maybe even desperate to see if someone would actually do it. I know I was one of those people. I watched this election like I was watching the rocket launch or something. I was genuinely unsure if it would go anywhere because I have seen this before, where a politician would win on ambition, people start to get excited and passionate, and then they start governing on caution, and people once again feel like politics doesn't work for them anymore. The promises quietly disappear and the job itself becomes more about survival. For Mamdani though, that didn't happen, and the reason why his campaign and his mayoralship spread the way it did, the reason someone else in London is claiming him as their mayor, is because watching him govern felt like proof. Proof that the thing that most of us had stopped expecting from politicians was still actually possible. So the mayoral office has power, and Mamdani is just proving just how much you can accomplish with that power, which makes the question almost painful to even ask. Why is he the only one? Here's what usually happens in local politics. The road to becoming mayor is long. You spend years inside political circles, learning what gets you in trouble and what doesn't. You learn whose money you need and what they expect from it, and you learn which rooms you have to show up to and which people you can't afford to lose. And slowly, without you even noticing it's happening, you start governing for those rooms before you've even won the office. And by the time most people get there, they've already made all the trades. The ambition that got them into politics in the first place has been quietly worn down into something safer, something that doesn't make anyone uncomfortable. They became cautious because every step of the journey rewarded caution and punished boldness, and that's what the process does to people. But here's the part that I feel like nobody really talks about when they talk about jaded politicians. The reason why mayors end up governing for a narrow slice of people isn't just about donors or political survival, it's about who's actually watching. According to the Center of Effective Government, typical turnout for mayoral elections is around 20%, which means 1 in 5 eligible voters. And the people who do actually show up aren't actually representative of the city. They're oftentimes homeowners, wealthier people, and older residents who are more far likely to participate, while young people such as myself, or renters, low-income residents, or minorities such as Black and Latino Americans participate far less. So think about what that means for a politician trying to win. They're not trying to campaign for the city, they're trying to campaign for a fraction of the city that ends up showing up. And that fraction itself skews much older, wealthier, and more established. So you end up with mayors who spend their time at events where normal people aren't at. They're talking to media outlets and billionaires and not normal people, and they're showing up to the nursing rooms where the people who already vote end up living, and completely ignoring the rest of the city in the process. Not because they're necessarily evil, but because that's what the incentives tell them to do. And even in proper studies done by the Manhattan Institute, for example, low turnout elections often favor organized interests, homeowners, and higher income voters, and that has a profound influence on what politicians actually prioritize. The city you get is a city those voters wanted, and everyone else just lives in it. Mamdani is interesting because his campaign deliberately flipped that dichotomy. He built his coalition from the people who had been opted out of the process entirely. So renters, young people, and working families, when those people actually show up, the math itself changed completely. He arrived in the office with a mandate from the city as it actually exists, including all the minorities and everyone who didn't vote for him, not just a slice of it that normally votes. Most mayors never asked what the job could be because the people holding them accountable never asked that question either. Mamdani's voters did though, and that pressure itself didn't just disappear after election day either. So when I researched for this video, I decided to do something. I looked up my mayor, and for reference, I live in the city of Las Vegas. My current mayor is 75-year-old Shelley Berkeley, which I'll let that sink in for a second. And before I sat down to make this video, I had absolutely no idea she existed. So I looked her up, and what I found was nothing you could feel. And I'm sure if you look yours up too, you'll probably see that your mayor probably hasn't accomplished anything you truly felt either. And fortunately, this is not groundbreaking news. But I kept digging more about my city, and this fact honestly really bothered me. Because before Berkeley, Las Vegas had two mayors who, between them, held this office for my entire life. Oscar Goodman from 1999 to 2011, and his wife Carolyn Goodman from 2011 until recently in 2024. Oscar himself literally swore his own wife into the mayoral office. One family, and in fact one couple, for 25 years ruled over the gambling capital of America, and in fact this is the only time in American history that a spouse directly succeeded a spouse as mayor of a major city. And in all that time I never knew either of their names, so I looked up what they actually did, and for Oscar his legacy was downtown redevelopment. The vision that he had for Vegas was the Manhattanization of Las Vegas, so taller buildings, cultural institutions, and better use of prime real estate. He was a primary force behind the Mob Museum, and he spent years lobbying to bring professional sports teams into the city. He called himself the happiest mayor in the universe. He kept a martini in his desk and won re-election with 84% of the vote. Carolyn continued the downtown push, of course, as well. So the medical district, a new city hall, sports infrastructure, their shared legacy, by their own telling, was transforming Las Vegas into a world-class city. The vision they had for Las Vegas was a vision for the version of this city that tourists see. For the corridor, for the strip, for the people visiting, but not for the people living here. So here's what my world-class city doesn't tell you about the Vegas that I personally grew up in. Clark County School District, or CCSD, is the 5th largest school district in the country, and in fact it faced the worst teacher shortage in the nation for the 2023 to 2024 school year. A national report ranked the Las Vegas area 49th out of 50 for major metropolitan areas for school quality. 49th in the whole country, if you let that sink in. I grew up in those schools, everyone I knew grew up in these schools, and we felt it, and we were reminded constantly from our parents and teachers how bad our education system was, and how we could move out, and we should, but we couldn't because it was too expensive. And while the downtown area was getting its ribbon cuttings and its performing arts centers, there were people living underneath it, and I mean literally underneath it. An estimated 1,500 people live in the flood tunnels between Las Vegas, building homes out of plywood and scrap metal. Las Vegas residents like myself call them the mole people because they live inside the city's stormwater tunnels to escape the heat and find private shelter. And this city, for reference, regularly hits 110 degrees. So when the Formula 1 racetrack was being built, or when the Super Bowl had come to town, there was a lot of attention paid to moving the homeless away from the center of the town. Not housed, just moved away out of the eyes of the camera. And the traffic itself is terrible. I mean, every person who lives in the city knows about all the traffic cones that are constantly being placed, because Las Vegas itself was not designed for the people who live here. It was designed around the strip, around getting tourism and around getting these visitors where they need to go, because the roads were never designed with residents in mind. The average commuter, in fact, in Las Vegas spends 31 hours a year sitting in traffic due to congestion alone, on top of already long commutes in a sprawling car-dependent city with no meaningful public transit to get you from one side of the city to another. And then there's the economy, and Las Vegas itself runs on service workers, casino workers, hotel workers, food workers. These are the people who keep the whole machine of Las Vegas as you know it going. And the amount of times I've heard from people across all walks of life sharing how they feel trapped in Vegas because the only thing they can do is work in the hospitality industry is just astounding. For reference, and I'm going to tell you a personal story, my dad, to support my mom, my brother, and I through the 2008 recession, decided to put off his dreams of working with computers and IT to instead instead put food on the table by putting food on the tables of the elite as a server in the Strip. So if it weren't for my mom spending years building up her skill set to eventually making six figures while my dad was paying the bills, my family would still be stuck living paycheck to paycheck until this day. And unfortunately, that reality is what most families in Vegas are experiencing the same thing right now to this day, with no hopes or dreams of a better future. A typical Las Vegas family, for reference, would need to make $120,000 a year to reasonably afford a home. The median household income, however, is just $78,000. Between 2016 and 2025, so in very recent history, rents increased by more than 40% while wage growth lagged behind. The people building the city's billion-dollar hotels cannot afford to live in it. And while all of this is happening, there's a huge exodus of people from California migrating to Vegas because they're being priced out because it's too expensive. But what that ends up happening is that when they come over here, the prices of our homes go up because there's more people competing for them. In the same way, people are competing for the same jobs, so the jobs either end up paying less or they stay the same. And I'm not going to sit here and talk and pretend like the fault is that of the people coming from California, because they're just here trying to build better lives for themselves. The problem, though, lies within the people in power and regular citizens who decided that it wasn't in their best interest of existing homeowners in Vegas to build cheaper and affordable homes next to their nice gated neighborhoods, or God forbid their property value goes down by 10%. Oh my God. I say all of this because while these are problems that you can perhaps relate to wherever you live, all these problems are so intrinsically tied to being uniquely a Las Vegas resident. So when you look into the Goodman legacy, there are few stories really to be told of residents who actually say their lives were improved thanks to their leadership. Their legacy ends up being the Mob Museum and the Symphony Park and the sports teams and this shinier downtown, all the things that made Las Vegas look successful from the outside, all things that registered in the headlines and the ribbon cuttings, but none of the things that a working family on the east side of Las Vegas could really feel on a Tuesday morning. And of course, that itself is not unique to Las Vegas mayors, because that's just what most mayors do. They govern for the visible things, for the camera ready, and for the constituencies that were already paying attention. So the developers, the tourism boards, the downtown business interests, these people who show up while everyone who just lives with the consequences of the decisions that they didn't even know were being made. And I don't blame the Goodmans for everything that was and is wrong about Vegas as much as I rant about them, but they are still responsible for the city that they helped to shape and create. They made their choices, and for 25 years, most of it being my entire life actually, nobody who grew up here even knew that these choices were being made. Which means the question now becomes, what happens when we do start paying attention? In cities with lower turnout, residents 65 and older are up to 56 more times likely to vote than residents between 18 and 34. 56 times. Now, since we're in Las Vegas, let me put that into terms that make sense here. So, if someone told you that there was a bet on the table where your odds of making an impact were 56 times better than the alternative, and the stakes was the quality of the schools your kids go to, the rent you pay every month, and how long your drive is every morning, you would take that bet immediately. It's not even a close call. That's free money on the table that almost nobody is picking up. Most city council meetings in American cities have fewer than 20 consistent attendees. In cities of hundreds of thousands of people, meetings where the people we vote for, including our council members and mayor, they come together to decide the boring but important decisions that decide the direction of our whole city. The people who have shaped local policy for decades are not the most mysterious and powerful forces we think they are. They're really just the 10 people who keep coming back, the landlord association that sends 3 representatives to every zoning meeting, or the downtown business group that submits a public comment on every budget proposal. They're not winning because they're the most powerful, they're winning really because everyone else has left the room. But when you show up and you change what the room looks like, you also change what the politician thinks the city wants, and the city itself changes with it. So let me tell you in practice what that actually looks like, because I want you to see how you can be a part of that change. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to find your local city council meeting. Most cities post them publicly on their website, and most of them stream on Zoom as well, so you don't even have to leave your own house if you wanted to. So one Tuesday night, you're going to pull it up, and you're going to try to get a friend or your partner or anyone you can to sit with you, because it's going to be a very boring ride. And here's why, because I do want to be honest about what you're about to watch.
3. Public comment. Comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. Hello? Yeah?
Good afternoon.
Okay.
My name is John Abel. I
Hello.
represent the city marshals.
John, what was that last name?
John Abel, A-B-E-L.
Okay. During public...
I joined one recently, and I was there for about 2 hours. During these long 2-hour meetings, it was almost entirely composed of zoning variances and building permits and all that boring stuff. This is the boring stuff that no one likes to see, and I very much get that sentiment. But here's what happens when you keep showing up to these meetings. And I want to make it a very fair example of what it realistically could look like. So let's take this. A few meetings in, someone brings up a budget proposal, let's say. Maybe it's a discussion about where the city is allocating for emergency infrastructure. You've been listening long enough to these conversations that you start to understand the concept, and you know the room, so you raise your hand or you unmute yourself on Zoom, and you say something. All it takes is a minute or 3 sentences, and you say that you think more money should go towards a flood warning system, and less towards, let's say, the police. Something real, something you can actually feel in your city. That room has maybe like 10 people in it, so you just became one of the loudest voices in that room on behalf of every person in your city. The council member starts making notes of you because you're not a usual face. You're new, and new faces end up getting remembered, and the ones who keep coming back are the ones they really start listening to. And here's what that minute on a public comment matters in a way that's practical and not just abstract. In Kerr County, Texas, local officials knew nearly for a decade that they needed a flood warning system. They brought it up at a commissioners meeting more than 20 times since 2016. The cost was just under $1 million, so a proposal was put together, but ultimately nothing ever happened with it. Then on July 4th, 2025, the Guadalupe River rose to more than 32 feet in a flash flood. More than 90 people died in Kerr County alone. Many of them were just children sleeping at night during a summer camp. So when we had $1 million to figure out what to do with it, and 20 times with our elected leaders reminded about where to put it, ultimately nobody in those rooms pushed hard enough to make that happen. A local council member actually said afterward he never thought to demand the flood warning sirens because he didn't realize anyone needed them. This is what that empty room ended up costing. In actual life for Kerr County, it was 135 people. Now imagine even a handful of residents have been showing up to these meetings for a few years now, asking where the flood systems are since it was brought up so many times, putting it on the record every single month and making it impossible to table because it's being constantly addressed. This is not some unachievable level of civic engagement. This is the minimum effective dose needed to remind the people in the room who they're actually representing. And for the record, I am not blaming this problem and this tragic loss of life on ordinary working class citizens who are too busy working while the officials we've elected into office get paid to sit on their ass wondering why no one ever said anything. But what I am telling you is that if you've been fed up with a politics that has shown no change in your life, this is the lever you can pull to actually make the difference you've been wanting to see. Because what this actually looks like is you hopping on a Zoom call or going to where the actual meeting takes place and saying the same thing until someone has to answer for it. You go back the next month and you bring 2 friends, and now there are more residents in that room than there have been in months. A few months of this and the council member staff knows your name and their names, not because you guys are powerful, but because you guys kept coming back. In local politics, the people who keep coming back are the constituency, and everyone else that they think they're talking to is just a number on a voter roll at the end of the day. This is how the mechanisms of our local politics functions, and how we can actually make a difference. We have very little say in what Congress passes or what the Supreme Court rules, and I won't just stop saying that we should stop caring about what our national government does. But this truly is one of the few things we can actually do. Now, if you want to go deeper than just showing up, then there are organizations in your city that are already doing this work. There's tenant unions that fight rent increases and unsafe housing conditions, and neighbor associations that actually weigh in on zoning decisions and development plans that affect whether or not cheap housing can be built. There's transit advocacy groups, there's education coalitions. These aren't just protest organizations, really. They're the people who have learned the system and are actively using it. Joining one of these organizations means that you get briefed before the meetings and you know what's already on the agenda before you even walk in. You show up as a part of a group with the shared positions, which means you're not just a face, but you're a block of people in a room where the opposition is usually just a developer and their lawyer. So down in the description below, I will be putting links to help you with resources on how you can find your city council meetings and local organizations that are already active in your area, because both of these things only take roughly about 10 minutes to really actually do. Because here's the thing, Mamdani himself didn't happen in a vacuum. New York City already had decades of exactly this. Tenant unions, transit advocates, neighborhood organizations, boring, unglamorous people showing up to rooms that were almost empty and making noise anyways. That groundwork is what he ran toward. He didn't create the demand, New York did. And New York finally had a politician willing to meet those demands. Your city can build the same groundwork, but it starts with one meeting, one Zoom link, and one Tuesday night where you just sit back and first at least watch how it works. And when you do, I want to hear about it. Come back to this video and leave a comment. Tell me what city you're in, tell me what they were talking about, tell me if you even said anything. Beyond me asking you to subscribe and watch my other videos, I want this video to be the place where you can come back and hopefully see other people's stories of how local governance has really truly worked for them. The version of your city that has a mayor who governs like Mamdani. Visible, fast, and actually felt on the street that you live on, because this is what happens when enough people stop leaving the room empty. So go find your meeting, drag someone with you, and come back and tell me what you saw.